Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon to all the viewers joining us live through Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn platforms of TVET Reforms and GIZ Pakistan. My name is Umair Abu Bakr. I'm the Private Sector Engagement Expert and the National Coordinator for GIZ Pakistan. Warmly welcome you in the second webinar on Private Sector Engagement, a way forward to decent economic opportunities of skilled graduates and a sustainable TVET ecosystem. I hope all of you watched the first webinar on accelerating Pakistan economic growth through skilled labor workforce, in which we discuss about access, quality, relevance of vocational education with policy reforms and government attention with additional resources. As today's webinar is all about private sector engagement, we'll discuss about the significance of private sector engagement in TVET, that how this engagement is a way forward to decent jobs for TVET graduates and how this is sustainable for the whole TVET ecosystem. To initiate the discussion, let me just introduce with the distinguished panel members joining us in Islamabad and Karachi. With me, joining us from Karachi, Mr. Asher Saeed. He is Chief People Officer, Kia Lucky Motors Corporation. He has served for more than 3 decades to FMCGs, banking, automobile, and many large industries in Pakistan. With the support of academia and enterprises partnerships measures of TVET Sector Support Program, more than 500 graduates were placed in just Kia Lucky Motors itself for decent jobs. Welcome to the show, Mr. Asher.
Thank you very much, Umair.
Thank you. Joining us live from Karachi, Ms. Arshia Ahmed Saqib, who is an HR expert, currently working as Vice President Human Resources, Angro Fertilizers Limited. Also work for big names like Coca-Cola, Standard Chartered Bank, Ufone as Head of Talent and Acquisition. She has worked in the HR industry for more than 2 decades with national and multinational organizations and have the pulse of a market when it comes to recruitment. Welcome, Arshia, to the show.
Thank you so much, Umair. It's really nice to be here.
Thank you very much. And last but not the least, we have Ms. Iris Cordelia Rodsol. She is the head of TVET Sector Support Program. She has worked in several countries for more than 3 decades now in international development with a focus on education, TVET and social development. Welcome to the show, ma'am.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you very much. Thank you all of you in joining for today's webinar. Before we move on and initiate the discussion, our team has developed an information package on private sector engagement. So let's have a look at it first. Thank you.
Pakistan is a human resource-rich country. With 64% of around 220 million people below the age of 30, it is the second youngest country in South Asia. As per the published estimates, annually, at least 1.7 million youth will enter the job market up to 2040. Pakistan needs over 7% consistent GDP growth to absorb this young workforce. But luckily, there is a magic wand by the name of Technical and Vocational Education and Training, TVET, to make this happen. Pakistan's Technical and Vocational Education and Training system is working on numerous challenges in the area of access, quality, equity, and relevance. It strives to ensure that the youth is provided with ample opportunities to train in new skill sets. TVET Sector Support Program is working together with the private sector organizations through skill forums, institute management committees, business and industry associations, and enterprise partnerships for the major widespread and success of technical and vocational education, training, as well as employment for the human resource, especially youth in Pakistan. It is integral to develop a sustainable demand-driven TVET system for economic prosperity of the country. An effective TVET system and embedded private sector is arguably a panacea for unemployment, low productivity, slow economic growth, and sluggish socioeconomic development. Such a system can yield phenomenal results for economic growth by exponentially increasing productivity of the workforce.
Welcome back. So as this whole webinar revolves around private sector engagement, to start the discussion, I'll request Mr. Asher Saeed, the first question to you, sir. So from the eye of private sector, what are the challenges do you face in finding a skilled workforce from the labor market?
All right, Umar. I think a good beginning question. Challenges are the galore of challenges, but at the same time, the first challenge and the foremost is availability of resource which industries like us require to put into our on the shop floor, so that we have the resources who can right away start doing what we do, which is actually assembly of many of automobiles in the country and in our organization. So that's the main challenge, resource crunch. I would categorize it as that. So there is an upsurge in automobile industry right now. A lot of new players coming in. But the challenge it faces that the players which were there from last, let's say, 30, 40 years, were not many, but just three. So the whole pressure, there were just two ways. Either we poach the talent which exists in the industry, or we go in terms of recruiting talent whom we can nurture, whom we can train. And I think we went for the option two. So the resource crunch remains the key challenge.
Thank you very much. So it's mainly the availability of the resources, which is normally a challenge for private sector. And that's where TVET comes into play. I'll move on to the HR side. Ms. Arshia Ahmed Saqib, what perspective does HR unit, a giant multinational organizations like you have, has when it comes to recruitment of skilled workforce?
Right, Umair. So, the technical workforce hiring for any industry. Currently, I work for a fertilizer industry, and I work for some other industries as well. So hiring, the technical skilled workforce hiring has a great competition with the graduates which are coming after doing their degrees locally and internationally. And then when you go out and you have to fill these positions for your position, for roles like trade apprentices, for roles which are factory based, for roles which requires hands-on skilled labor experience. So the recruitment, the entire recruitment strategy has to be different, because you have to go out, find the people with the right skill set, because the industries now, they are ever evolving. They're not, the speed of change is not as fast, which is now, so the right skill set is always been a challenge to find. And for a big organization, it is not just to find, recruit and hire them, it is to make them part of the environment and keep building up their skill, because the upskilling and reskilling is the key these days. Today, if you're working on a machine, 5 years down that is all changed, and you have new plant to operate, or a new machine to operate, or you need a new skill set to understand how this will work. So for an organization as big as Agro Fertilizer, the agility and agility in recruitment process and finding the right skill set has been part of our strategy, and we always we continuously working on making it improve, because at times the kind of gap is there in finding the right skill set. It takes a lot of time for us to bring that skill set in the organization, and time is money these days. So the recruitment strategy is consistently is evolving when it comes to technical hiring.
Great, rightly said it. Right skill set to find these days is really difficult now, as mentioned by Asher as well. I'll definitely talk about the last phrase you said, that time is money, because most of the time when you're unable to find the proper technical skilled labor, and then this whole issue arises. Let me move on to the program side to Ms. Iris Kodlier-Rodzol. When the implementation of the reforms initiated in 2011, what were the main challenges that TVET Sector Support Program faced in engaging the private sector? And what TVET Sector Support Program has done actually to overcome those challenges?
Okay. In the beginning of the program, we looked at where do we exactly need the input from the private sector in order to improve and to reform the vocational training. And the private sector we need in the planning of TVET. We need to know where are the jobs now and in the future. We needed to know how many jobs are there and what skills precisely are needed. In the implementation of the training, we need the input from the private sector in curriculum development, in telling us what are the requirements for workshops in the schools, how do we harmonize the theoretical and practical training, and of course to have workplace-based training in industry. So in the beginning of our program in 2011, we had to look at who from the private sector do we talk to. We needed an entity which is representative for a certain sector or for the private sector. We needed an entity where we can have a certain confidentiality of the talks, because not many companies might want to tell what are their plans of the future, but we need these plans in order to prepare the young people. And we needed companies or entities that dedicate time to this discussion. So in the beginning, there was really not such a structure of dialogue. Our program partner is NAVTTC and as an APAC structure, so we needed an entity which is on the same level. And we found FPCCI with headquarters in Karachi as the appropriate partner to talk to. Together with FPCCI, we set up the National Skills Forum. We had the secretariat of the Skills Forum in FPCCI, and from there was a TVET committee being founded. And from there on, we started setting up institute management committees in vocational training centers. We set up sector skills councils and worked with business industry associations. And from there on, we had our partners to work with.
Thank you very much. Rightly said that input from the private sector is the main crux of this whole private sector engagement phenomena. Let me just move on to the private sector again. Mr. Ashar Saeed, as you talk about the challenges and so many other aspects related to private sector engagement, and what are the challenges normally a company or the big giants like Kia Lucky Motors is facing. So when we had this discussion, when we had this interaction and had this engagement with Kia Lucky Motors, how you are supporting to the TVET graduates in the job placements when it comes to on-the-job trainings and internships?
All right. Actually, I think one of the key things that we did was that we introduced an apprenticeship program. So in this apprenticeship program, and which actually comes under the Apprenticeship Act of the Government of Pakistan, we recruited, I would say, certified individuals, trained individuals from institutes which are supported by TVET as well, the likes of Aman Tech, Mehman Institute, Owner Foundation, and we took them into areas related to automobile assembly, areas like weld, paint, assembly, other areas as well. And we put them straight on the job. And they were assigned or attached with few experienced people. And then in the first year, by the end of the first year of this training or apprenticeship program, they were quite well trained, and they had the ability to take on assignments independently as well. So as we stand today, out of, let's say, the whole workforce that we have working on the shop floor, good 50% of them are people, individuals who are through this apprenticeship program. These apprentices coming straight from institutes I mentioned, which are under the TVET support program. So that is the way we also we're trying to do our bit as well, to chip in with our contribution as Lucky Motor Corporation, that attracting and involving these youth into these kind of jobs, which will employ them productively. They can be useful for their families as well. They can support their families. So that was the idea, and that was our experience, and the experience has been extremely successful. I'm delighted to share that extremely successful experience. Teaching them on job, they getting trained, they becoming productive, and helping us in a big way. As I said, 50% of our workforce consists of these apprentices.
Thank you very much, Asher Sharp. Building a question on your comment, as you've just mentioned, the linkages with the institute supported by TVET Sector Support Program. As the company giant organization like Kia Lucky Motors, there are so many businesses are entering in Pakistan, which definitely be needing a workforce quite soon. As you have a pretty much experience now when you initiated your business a couple of years back, and till now, as you have mentioned that 500 graduates, TVET graduates actually have already been placed in your organizations. How do you see this linkage between an industry and the academia supported by TVET Sector Support Program? How do you see and how other enterprises can take benefit out of it?
Actually, the forum on which we have engaged today, this has happened before as well, supported and sponsored by TVET, and that actually happened in person. I recall that almost a couple of months ago. So I think we need to have more of these forums and platforms and programs in order to create awareness not only amongst the potential graduates of these institutes, but also amongst the organizations like us, who I believe not all of them are as aware of availability of these kind of resources supported by Skill Development Council or TVET. So I think this is a very good step in terms of creating this linkage which you're talking about, that is between academia, in this case, those like that academia has all these institutes, and the industries like us and agro fertilizers as we have here as well. So this needs to go on. This will help in creating an awareness that we can have trained resource who have the basic skills, and then we can take them on job and deploy them and train them and then use them, because when these apprentices come in, they are very raw. And being raw helps us in molding them as per our culture, our requirement. They become a specialized resource. They have a lot of ownership and loyalty towards the program as well as the organization. So yes, I think industry-academia linkage needs to be further worked upon. I think it's still not adequate, but session like today's session is the right step in creating that awareness.
Great, thank you very much for your comment, Asher Saab, on this. And rightly said, awareness and orientation of the private sector still needs to be done more, so more industries and enterprises can take benefit out of TVET. I'm going on to the HR perspective now, Ms. Arshia. As you're looking from an overarching view, do you think that our labor market is ready to fill the HR needs of any organization like yours, specifically when it comes to the technical labor?
Thank you for the question, Umair. So, Umair, I've been associated with the technical recruitment for quite some time now. And as I said, for different industries, I've done this kind of recruitment, not just recruitment, but then their retention and their development as well. Now, if I can be, really straightforward here, in last some time, I now see a disconnect between institutions and private sector. And the disconnect is skill gap and the quality of talent we receive. It's all supply and demand rule which applies on this recruitment or any sort of a recruitment. It's the talent supply and talent demand. Now I see that, if I just talk about agro fertilizer, in any given year, we hire around 100 plus trade apprentices, which is a requirement by the law, and which is you have to hire them. And we go all out to fill up these 80 or 100 odd positions. And I tell you that, it's a struggle. It's a struggle because the kind of a skill set we need now, we don't find that, because maybe, I'm not sure, maybe the curriculum is not updated. Maybe the teachers who are teaching these students are not updated with the latest knowledge. Maybe the technology which now is used in these plants and these organizations is not what the TVET or other institution are teaching to their students and their teacher. So there's a huge skill gap there, and then as an organization, you cannot really compromise on the quality of the talent. Probably you will underhire them, and then you will develop them yourselves. Then organizations, they develop their own internal training centers, they have their own faculty. So you bring in these students who are, not exactly according to the technical requirements of the organization, but you bring them in with their gaps, knowingly that where the gap is, and then you build their skill set. So this is something I think, and I've been talking about it, and I've been telling this not just to the technical institute, but to the big universities as well, because we talk so much about millennials and we talk so much about generational change, but there's very less we are doing to accommodate this change within the industries and within the educational institutions. So that's my perspective.
Rightly said, as many organizations and many enterprises are coming up with the same perspective as well, that by the time the things are changing, and in this recent COVID situation, when so many new businesses are coming up, so many new technologies are coming into place, and that's where this quality comes into play. And as far as this curriculum updation is concerned, that is something which now program is looking after in the new phase as well, and definitely we'll discuss with Ms. Iris on this. Let me just move on to Ms. Iris again for the next question. As you've told about that, where were we in 2011? What were the structure we laid so far? So I want to know what is the response so far from the private sector side in their engagement in different interventions of TVET reforms and in the support of employment promotion through decent jobs, maybe internships or on-the-job trainings.
Yes, I've talked about where we're coming from, and I can say that the response of the private sector was really overwhelming. The introduction of competency-based training and assessment was a game changer because it puts the focus on competencies, on the skills, and not so much anymore on the hours of class of the hours spent in class. So far we have developed 72 new curricula. We have equipped workshops. We have done the teacher training according to these curricula, and we have introduced an assessment system which makes it more transparent what the trainees really learned. Are they already competent to perform these skills at the workplace? Another part which was very much of interest to the private sector was the recognition of prior learning mechanism through which people from the informal sector could pass the exams and get certificates, formal certificates, to be better integrated in the formal job sector. One element which was really critical was the workplace-based training. We said that in competency-based training, it is absolutely important that the students don't only learn in class at the school, but they learn at the company to really get to know the speed of the work in a company. So we had more than 1,500 MOUs signed with companies to agree on the workplace-based training, and so far a total of 50,000 CPTA graduates we have across the country. Of these 50,000, we have roughly 60 to 70% of students already placed in industry, and I think these are very positive results to continue on and to expand and to improve further in the future.
Great, thank you, Iris. Actually, this shows the commitment of the private sector side as well, since so far, as you said, in the last 5 years, approximately 1,500 linkages have been created between academia and between the private sector. And as you said, that 50,000 CBT graduates are there in the market, out of which approximately 50 to 60% are there going into the placements as well. With this, as I've specifically talked about this graduates as well who are there. What more can be done? Because there obviously there are some who have been placed and there are some who are actually looking for jobs. What are different initiatives which program is looking after and are able to do to make sure that these remaining can also go into the placements?
I mean, it's always a matter of adjusting the training contents, and the curriculum development is not something static. It will need to be updated also according to the new technologies. But one area which we consider is also very important is career coaching and job placement, where we are talking with the students once they start studying. Is this the qualification that is really the most suitable for you? Will you be successful in this qualification? And we accompany them in job placement or in the job search doing courses on how to write curricula, doing courses on how to survive job interviews. So this is also a very important part on how we can improve the placement rate of students.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the private sector side again, Mr. Ashraf Saab, as you're all discussing about the private sector engagement, and you've been involved with TVET since so long now, and been looking after all the graduates in your own factory line. So how this private sector engagement in TVET is sustainable for the whole TVET ecosystem and not just for the placement?
Okay, actually, I would actually remain on the same theme that TVET, as well as the relevant sections of the government, they need to join hands, and the government needs to support in terms of creating platforms, in terms of reaching out to the right target audience. Because as we see right now, when we cast a look at the population composition of the country, where we have at least 60% people who are below 30, that's a huge chunk in terms of the overall population that needs to be engaged. And when I look at the interest of youth these days, there are two sections. One is what we are trying to engage or attract through vocational and technical training, and they can be very gainfully employed in this area once they are rightly trained. The other side, as we also see, a lot of youth coming into startups and all, they want to be entrepreneurs and the related areas. So this is actually a very, very important strategic initiative where we can engage a big chunk of population into these areas, and obviously devise curriculum, right curriculum, which is required by the industries. So and they have enough meat, or they see enough meat that, okay, fine, if we take them in after basic assessment, they will add value to the production process or to what we are doing as a business. So private sector engagement, private sector involvement is definitely good for the whole idea. But then I think reaching out to the audience as well is equally important.
Great. Moving on to another question, Ashraf Saab, from your comment. As Arshia just mentioned as well, that there's a gap somehow when this, let's say, graduate or a TVET graduate comes to the industry line or the factory lineup. So there are obviously gaps in the needs of yours, what sort of skill set you require, and somehow whatever they get trained. How do you fulfill this gap to ensure that they are being then available and according to your needs, first thing, like this gap thing? And the second thing I want to know, which definitely you can tell better, because before TVET, you somehow used to search the market for these technical resources, but now you have ready-made resource available coming from these institutes, which is like TVET institutes. So how do you see the difference from those TVET graduates and taking anyone from the market?
Is this question directed to me?
Yes, Ashar.
Oh, all right. Okay, one or two comments, brief comments. The first one is that we as an organization, and I'm sure that is true for most of the professional organizations, we are ready to work together with these institutes in order to improve upon their curriculum. Also to help them in as many ways as we can. For example, when we talk about taking resources in for automobile assembly, we are ready to donate one of our automobiles so that the students can dissect it and understand what they can learn out of it. So that kind of support we can provide. Also support in terms of giving some visiting faculty also, because the engineers who are working here, they're very trained, they're very experienced, and we can join hands with one of these institutes who are sponsored by TVET programs. And in that way, we can enrich the curriculums as well as the teaching style, as well as the hands-on knowledge, which is very important for these young graduates who are coming out. So that is one thing. The other thing is that we also, when we say we, I mean TVET and the Skill Development Council and other such organizations, they also need to study that what are the upcoming trends. For example, Pakistan has recently seen that a lot of organizations are getting into mobile phone assembly. So from that perspective, when we go around, and we at Lucky Motor Corporation, we have a separate division where we are inshallah starting assembly of Samsung mobile phones. So when I went out into the market in terms of institutes and I started looking for those people who have some experience or knowledge of assembling mobile phones, we could lay our hands on one or two institutes, but not many. So yes, we are taking in some apprentices. We are trying to train them. We are trying also to look at the other industry players, which are actually not many, who are assembling mobile phones in Pakistan. So these institutes also need to invest or also need to pay attention to the upcoming industries as well, which it's a very good thing that Pakistan is getting into assembly of these kind of, I would say, a bit techie stuff. Good news for the country, but we need to have again resource for it as well. We have taken a plunge to put together a factory here, which will be operational from January. But yes, at the same time, we need the right resource as well to run that factory. So I think yes, this is my submission.
Thank you very much, Ashar. And that is actually the beauty of private sector engagement. When private sector engagement and when private sector and companies like Kia Motors Corporation moving forward and giving this pledge that they are available for providing the visiting faculty, they are there to improve the curricula. And when TVET graduates going into the organizations like Samsung Mobile, it's going to be a very big change coming soon. Moving on to Arshia now, just changing a little bit trend of, because we are now keep on changing with the trends of the market due to change in technology as well. Do you think our labor market is ready to bring in green economy in place?
So Anchor as an organization, its emphasis a lot on economic development and the environmental sustainability, and we have a lot of programs going in. And also, we encourage our employees to think in that pattern. But if you ask me that at this point in time, are we ready for a green economy? Being a country where we are still in the developing phase. Right now, I don't see that we can fully depend on green economy. Yes, we are doing a lot of, as in country, we are taking a lot of initiatives, tree plantation and energy in the area of energy. There are so many talks going on in UN forums. The different initiatives are on the way. 2030 agenda is on the way. We might derail a bit from achieving it by 2030, but there's a lot of work going on. But right now, I don't think so that we're ready for it to 100% depend on the green economy. But yes, there's a lot of progress. There's a lot of talk. There's a lot of awareness. There's a lot of work going on, and which in the end, eventually, that will help us to 100% move on to the green economy. And we have to start, at least we have started talking about it, at least organizations have started thinking about it. I have a bit of background with automobile industry, so I know in automobile industry, this started around, 10, 15 years ago. And then gradually now every organization every institute is thinking about it or taking some initiatives towards it.
Great. Thank you. And you rightly said about the 2030 agenda and where we are standing right now. And we need to see that what still needs to be done in order to make sure that we are able to adapt the green economy resources and what needs to be done more. Moving on to Ms. Iris again. As you've been working in so many countries, in not just TVET and education as well, but specifically talk about TVET when it comes to the international practices, as here we are trying to ensure that this private sector engagement can be a very good structure defined and laid off through which our TVET graduates can take benefit and ultimately goes boosting the economy. But when it comes to, let's say, a country like Germany, what sort of structure are there and how private sector is coming into play?
Okay. Well, in Germany, the TVET sector is organized slightly differently. One very important thing is that there is a consensus in society that options for youth are really necessary because training highly increases the possibilities for employment. So in Germany, we don't have very many natural resources, so the ingenuity of the people and the quality of our workforce are really the factors that are decisive for the competitiveness of Germany. So we have major entities involved in TVET. We have the chambers, which are involved in the assessment of the vocational graduates. We have companies, of course, who provide the practical training. We have the trade unions, which are involved in the conditions that the trainees are undergoing. And maybe some numbers. In Germany, we have roughly 325 qualifications that one can study in vocational training. We have about 1.4 million apprentices. We have an apprenticeship system and not competency-based training. And of these 1.4 million apprentices, they have a very high placement rate, either in the company where they are learning or in another company. And they are already receiving some kind of apprenticeship payment whilst they are undergoing training. The training is generally 3 years. And one also very important factor is roughly every fourth company in Germany, some 450,000 companies are offering apprenticeships. That means yes, we have the big names which offer many apprenticeship places, but the big bulk of vocational training is done by small, medium enterprises. That means through that we have a really spread of all the regions in Germany, because you need everywhere apprenticeship for all kind of jobs. One should not forget that vocational training is a very expensive training. In Germany, we are talking on an average about 18,000 euros per year per trainee. And a lot of it is really also spent in the apprenticeship payment to the trainees, which is not that much, but it's something to at least to live off whilst they're learning. And if we are asking, if in research, private sector has said basically 70% is a return on investment, and because the apprentices after at least the first year, they are already productive. They're in the productive process and they're making money for the company as well. So there is really a high investment, and one can say the private sector is basically spending 1/3 of this high investment, and the rest is being done by the public sector, which takes care of the theoretical training. We have roughly 1,500 vocational training centers. We have regional training centers where we have like machinery and equipment that small companies might not be able to have it available for their apprenticeships. And we also have specifically targeted training programs for young people who have it a little bit more difficult to enter in the job market. So there is room for investment from the public sector, but the private sector is really spending a lot of the money of the vocational training system in Germany.
Great, thank you very much. Such a detailed overview of what's happening actually in Germany and as an international practice, and that actually shows when private sector comes into play, this sort of results we normally foresee, and that is how we are here and talking about the way forward. Moving on to one more question with Ms. Arias, you've specifically mentioned about small medium enterprises. Is the TVET sector support program looking something into it, and is there any plan of going into specifically with SME?
Yes, because we think this is a lot of potential that we still can use, because we need a qualified workforce all over the economy. And small, medium enterprises play a very important role in the economy in Pakistan. So either in the companies or as suppliers to companies, we are looking at also self-employment options, because we want to really make use of the vast potential of youth in Pakistan.
Great. As rightly mentioned, self-employment is now, again, it's going to be a very key and prominent role when it comes to the employment promotion thing. Exactly. Moving on to the industry again, Ashar Sabes, it is just mentioned a very rightly termed return on investment. Yeah. And when it comes to industry point of view, normally the things we normally see as an actual figure is the bottom line. Yeah. So in your point of view, how sustainable this TVET ecosystem will add value, let's say, to the bottom line and to the labor market as well as to the economy?
Omer, I think it's crucial. It's crucial to say the least because, as I said, the kind of population that we have, we need to have focus on these kind of initiatives. And I think we are very grateful to TVET, as an organization which is trying to do, I would say, and I would term it as CSR on part of Germany and on part of GIS. It's a great service, and we really need it. We really need it not only from the perspective of youth, which have been highlighted, but also from the perspective of industry. That, as I said, we are using so many of these graduates, and we are helping them in training. We are doing our bit and taking advantage from them as well, turning them into some loyal employees. So yes, it's very crucial. It's very important. We need to do more. The focus, as you rightly pointed out, and also by Iris, that the focus needs also to go out to small and medium enterprises as well, other than large scale manufacturing, because that's the I would say majority of enterprises operating in the country. They are small in size, but at the same time, they employ a lot of people, and they have the potential to employ more for the economy to grow. Because economies generally grow standing on small and medium enterprises and not large scale manufacturing. So the small and medium enterprises also need to get their share of these graduates supported by different programs. And we also need to work upon increasing the variety of these programs, as I said earlier, from the perspective of cell phone industry. So yes, it's a great program. It's going ahead, but it needs more visibility, it needs more awareness.
Great. Taking this opportunity and asking one more question from you, keeping the name Kia Lucky Motors and along with that Samsung Mobiles in view. When these big giants are working in any country, they're always looking forward to move forward, to expand, to grow. What do you take into consideration? Because obviously TVET, when you talk about the technical labor, that's actually the main vein of, in any growth of this industry. So how do you foresee like these TVET graduates coming into play when it comes to the expansion of these industries like you or Samsung or any other company?
I think if you're talking about the quality of graduates, it's pretty good. But yes, there is always that proverbial area of improvement, so that is there. They can further be trained better. They can be provided better equipment. I'm sure in these institutes that equipment can be sponsored by users of that resource like us, and that can be sponsored naturally, first and foremost, by the government as well. So quality of graduates can definitely go up. Once they are with us, then we try to do our bit because we can't take chances with our end product. So we make sure that once they are into a task independently, they are well trained, because we can't really give you sportages and picantos which are not really good. So from that perspective, the quality of graduates can definitely go up. We will continue to do our bit, but at the same time, we need to do some more work in that area.
Thank you, Ashar. Moving on to Arshia from the HR perspective, because when it comes to finding the technical labor, sometimes it gets really difficult. And the organization like Engro Fertilizers, have you ever thought of starting your own training programs to fill the requirement of skilled labor within your organization?
Yes. So at Engro as a group and Engro Fertilizers, there is a very, very heavy focus in employee development. So there's a lot of investment which goes in, and there's a complete technical training institute which we have, and that focuses on a curriculum of at each level of induction, which craft you're hired in. how it will, the level of skill would be after a year or so. So there are about 100 of programs which are there in our the technical training center. And when we hire these apprentices, or when we hire the diploma holders, or skill talent, when we hire them, they go through a complete 1 year skill enhancement plan. So that's more on the functional side. And similarly, there's a complete plan on their general development as an employee, or as a part of the organization. So both goes hand in hand, and there's a complete roadmap of training development of our employees in technical and in non-technical.
Great. Thank you very much, Arshia. Moving on to the program side, Ms. Iris, question from you. What do you think from the program perspective is still missing in the private sector engagement, and what program is looking for the new phase of TVET sector support program?
I mean, in working with the private sector, in order to make Pakistan more competitive, in order to have industry comply with the requirements for the exports, in order to strengthen the domestic industry and the consumption, in order to have really a quality training, we need to be very clear which are the skills that are needed in the industry, which precisely is needed for people to perform better, more efficiently, to get jobs easier, and in order to support this industrialization process. So we really need foresight, and we need a very good dialogue with the private sector. There are new technologies, and we need to be prepared for them, and they need to be also reflected in the training of the new students and also of the workforce in the companies. We heard that there is training programs from an Anglo company. Big companies can do that, but there's also smaller companies which need training. So we have to be really at the pulse of the time to see what is required to make the workforce perform better through vocational training. And we also will need a process of lifelong learning, because as the technology will change, also the requirements will change. And it's not enough to have one time studied and then you are in the industry. You have to also have some process where you go and learn the new technologies in order to be more useful in the production process. So this is really a process of improvement which is continuous. And there are some programs which will also be triggering more investment, which will trigger innovation. And this is why in the new phase of the program, we will focus on green skills to make the production and the service provision greener, because we are convinced that environmental concerns are concerns of the future. And we will also focus very much on digitalization. Digitalization in the training provision, digitalization for the jobs, because any industrial mechanic will need to understand more and more about digitalization. And we will also prepare very clear digital jobs, graphic designing, and these kind of professions, because we are convinced that they will be more and more needed in the economy.
Great, thank you very much. As you've just given a hint of what's coming next in the new phase of more or less green skills and digitalization, I'll move on to Asha Saeed Saab, and taking the last question from you before we go into the break for the question answer sessions from the viewers. Last question is taking from Iris' point of view, what do you and how do you see this green skills coming into play, and then digitalization jobs in future, and what can be a link with TVET? How do you foresee this from the industry perspective?
You said something about Umair digitalization. Did I hear right?
Yeah, let me just repeat the question, because we discussed about green skills and digitalization, as Iris was mentioning that this is something which is coming into the new phase. From the industry perspective, how do you see these green skills coming into play, and then digitalization supporting the industry, and obviously linkages with TVET sector support program?
Okay. Since we are newly into, I would relate this question more with what we are experiencing at Samsung. where we are into, I would say, not as large scale as automobile, but into a very high-tech industry. So there, digitalization has its role to play. And when I say role, it means that most of the cell phone manufacturing process is absolutely automated with a lot of digitalization. So the kind of resource we need there is someone who are familiar with digitalization, who can relate to that equipment, who are able to read what's going on the assembly line. So that's quite a bit of, I would say, tech-savvy graduates whom we require there, and also the ones who have certain speed. So I would mix digitalization with speed. Something interesting which I would like to share is that in the initial days when we were doing trial production of cell phones, the number of cell phones being produced in an hour was quite low. And after a month or so, the number went up because the individuals, the employees who were standing there involved in that process, their ability to pick up on that digitalization or on that automation improved. So if we get resource which is already trained into these kind of skills, where they can get onto the shop floor, get involved in a highly automated industry, that would be definitely very important and productive for us, players like us. So that's my bit on this particular area.
Thank you very much, Ashar, of giving an overview regarding the digitization and green skills. Last question with Arshia, with more or less going to be the same. That's when it comes to agro fertilizers, when it comes to big giants like you, how do you see these green skills coming into play and boosting the economy? And plus, what do you think of digitalization having linkages with TVET?
Right, thank you for the question. So Umair, as I said, that as an organization, as a country, we are moving towards a green economy, looking for the solutions which are good for the environment, good for the organization, and good for the society where we work and we serve. And there are a lot of initiatives which are, in the pipeline, or which are, since Engro as a group is into fertilizers, into energy sector, is into telecom sector. So there's a lot of margin and opportunity where we can adopt these practices and make it more sustainable for organization and for the generations to come. So there's no denial to this question, and that is the future. Now, the question you asked about digitization, I think, we are already in the age of digitization. So this question probably would have made more sense about 4 or 5 years back. Now, you are in it. I mean, there is no way. There's no other way about it. So, the skill gap which I was talking to you was quite referred to this. Now, the machines which we work with are plants, not just in fertilizer and any other sectors. They're automated. They try. There's so much of data coming in. There's so much of digitization being applied. The efficiency solutions are being applied. So the future employee, or the students with TVET or the students with other institutions have to have the skills to come and manage this kind of environment. There are already AI involvement in a lot of our machinery. There's already data mining going on. There is already so many other initiatives going on. If you just talk about HR, the kind of work 3-4 people were doing previously, now it's being done with just one software. It's been done with just the reports which we're making. We were at the end of the month, a person would sit for 24 hours and then make that month-end report is now just a click away. So these are the advancements. These are the technology advancement. This is the digitization. The interviews are being done by the robots now. Every other platform you go and interact, you're interacting with the chatbot. So the future is in all of these kind of environment, the entire digital environment. So, and the future of organization lies with this talent which is coming to the corporate market. So we have to make the match, and they have to marry with this thing. So I mean, that's the future, clearly.
Great, thank you very much, Arshia. Before we move on and take last question and moving on to the break, my last question from Iris, as we have done so much in last 5 years when it comes to the private sector engagement, companies are there, but still we somehow see that there's still a gap, or maybe there's still a lot needs to be done. Can you give just some examples of what still needs to be done when to take other private sector or the industry who are still not on board it, keeping the situation in view of COVID, when there are so many industries coming into play, which still needs to be tapped? Of what sort of view you have when it comes to the new phase?
I think the dialogue with the private sector is really absolutely crucial, and also the most convincing argument is success. And I think we have quite a number of successes in the engagement of the private sector, in the working together. For example, in the case of Karachi, where PAPGAI, the Association of the Printing Industry, has taken over a training center from the public sector and is training the trainees, especially for their companies. And I think this is a very successful example where once the trainees are taken in, they can be very, very sure that they will have a job. Because at the end, the result of the vocational training is whether the young people will be declared competent and whether they can go into private sector to work and be successful and create their perspective for the future.
Great, thank you very much. Taking your point of view, as you've just mentioned, public-private partnership is now the way forward as well to ensure that private sector is coming into play and giving or taking the responsibility to ensure that these TEVET graduates, then moving on to the placement side. These are all the questions for today. Our team are just compiling all the comments and questions from all the viewers. We'll be just taking a minute break. Please stay tuned with us, all of you, and we are coming back just in a minute with all the questions. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for staying there. We have compiled all the comments and questions coming from all the viewers. So the first question we are taking is from Amna Mirza, and that actually goes to Ms. Iris. What are the future initiatives TVET Sector Support Program plans to have in the area of private sector engagement? And with this, I'm also going ahead with the second question, because that also relates to you, by Hassan Manzoor, of how private sector can have more say in the training delivery.
Okay, I'm happy to say that we are just now preparing the new phase of the current project, and we are very happy to be able to continue the support that we are providing to NAVTTC, to the TEVTAs, because there is so many youth entering the labor market every year, and so much potential to be for the Pakistani economy. And thanks to the further commitment of the German government, we can continue with a special focus on the provinces of Punjab and KPK, where we will be strengthening the areas of green skills, where we will be strengthening the digitalization efforts. And we heard just now that also from the private sector, digitalization is really the future. And another area is also looking at gender. How can we improve the chances that women have in the labor market? What is needed in order to integrate them more in the training and to have more jobs for young women available? So this will be the most important steps for the new future. In terms of private sector engagement, what is key is really the training at the workplace. So we will continue to be looking at the private sector to help us train young people to harmonize the theoretical training that they receive in the schools with practical level at the workforce, and in order to also combine self-employment options for the youth, because at the end, youth have different ideas, and there are some things that you can be doing in some areas better than in others. We have been, especially in COVID times, very successful with digital job offers, especially for young women in Balochistan. And we have seen that they are very happy to take them up and to continue working with the skills that they have learned in coding, in program, in digital skills. So I'm very happy to be able to continue the support.
Thank you very much for both the questions. The next question is from Namra, and that actually goes to Usher, that how companies like you can let more people to get internships in sophisticated professions. Usher, can you unmute, please?
I'm sorry about that. I was about to say that we do have an internship program for not only graduates coming out from engineering universities and business schools, but also have a program for internships in the manufacturing. So that's on, but yes, one thing is for sure that we do have a limited intake on account of that, because we cannot have more than a certain optimal number who can actually go onto the shop floor and take a flavor of what's happening there, because most of the operations, if not all, are very sensitive, and cannot really take risk with I would say novices, allow me to say, roaming around. Yes, but we do have a limited intake. We do take internees both in the corporate office as well as on the shop floor. But yes, we need to build further on that, and hopefully the way we are expanding, inshallah, I think we will be able to provide more opportunities for these kind of interventions.
Thank you very much. Though there are so many queries and comments coming up, but I'll be just taking few to ensure that we can cover somehow most of them, and the crucial one. The next question is from Sarah, that goes to Arshia. How do you see a TVET graduate from the HR perspective? Are they good enough for you?
That's a very interesting question. So it depends on the experience we get to have with different, as I call them, kids. But generally, I think I just want to make a comment on the previous questions as well, because those were very interesting, and I don't know why Umair didn't ask me any
Please do.
one of those.
Please do. Please go ahead.
You see, the way I look at graduating students, the way I interact them and I meet them, I think they have what it takes to be in these organizations. And I work very closely with millennials, with this generation, and I really admire them. I think they have the direction. What all they need is not a pat on the back, but probably some good bucks. And then you can see them performing at any heights. So what I'll say that, don't wait for an organization to come out and say, okay, we are inviting applications for internships, or we are inviting applications for trainee programs. You keep a lookout and do these kind of a projects. Go in those kind of areas where organizations start looking for you. They start looking for that kind of a skill. So keep yourself very updated with what's coming up next. What is the future of skill? What is the future of, in whatever field you are? Start working on those areas, and then the organizations will run after you. And I've seen that happening, and I've done it. I've hired people from the world, which the kind of skills they had, and I needed them, and I had to reach out instead of them to apply. So make yourself that competent enough that organizations start coming after you, and then they hire you for your skills. And secondly, I think the experience I had so far, it's been good. So there's not much complaint about TVET graduate or other technical graduates.
Thank you very much, Arshia. My last question is from Furqan Sheikh, goes to Ma'am Iris, and he mentioned that what are your thoughts over wages of technical graduate individual in a company are less than any general academic individuals. Your thoughts on it and your views, please.
Oh, that's a tough question. If you have quality workforce, there also needs to be payment for quality. We have seen that low wages after vocational training are also an impeding factor on young people to opt for vocational training. And I think it is really important to see that there is a development. The better you get, the more pay should also be there, because quality in the skills needs to be paid accordingly. I think what we need in the future is not only the quality of the workforce, but we also need, and that's something that I would like to add, is we need more training opportunity, because the number of youth is growing, and we need more opportunities to really provide them with training opportunities, not only in the big cities, but we really also in smaller cities, because all young people have a chance to excel.
Great. Thank you very much. Though we have so many questions, but my team will be catering them through online queries system. With this, I'll be just taking the final note from all our panelist members. I'll start from the private sector. I initiated from you, sir, first, so it's better you conclude the session and then we move on to the next two panelists, please. Final remarks from you. Ashar Saab, can you unmute, please?
I think as an HR professional, I am a happy customer of TVET and of the institutes who have been giving us a consistent supply of graduates who can be gainfully deployed and whom we can make best use of. We would like to build on that. We would like to increase our interaction with these institutes. Looking forward to better curriculum, looking forward to better skills. But yes, so far it has worked wonders for us.
Thank you very much, Ashar. Final comments from you, Ms. Arshia.
So I look forward for TVET graduates to compete and be in our organization and make their future with us. But I would just make a request here as well that let's fill that gap of supply and demand. find out the demand of private sector and build the skill of students on those demand and then bring them to the market. So I'm sure then it will be better for them and they'll excel more. But I look forward to have more TVET graduates at Tenge Fertilizer.
Point taken. Very nice. Thank you so much, Arshia. Last comments from you, Ms. Aris.
Thank you very much. I think this discussion has shown that private sector engagement in TVET is really very important and has a very important role to play. And basically, on the other side, without private sector engagement, TVET would not work. We might have to look at different forms of cooperation because there is not one size that fits them all. But it is very important to have the private sector in many different parts of the TVET planning, provision, and monitoring, and I'm looking forward to continued cooperation with the different companies of the private sector.
Great, thank you very much. With this, we are now going to close down this session, which is all you've listened regarding all the comments from the private sector, from the HR perspective, from the program perspective. My team will try their level best to answer all the questions because we have so many coming in. Please stay tuned for our third webinar coming soon. The date will be announced over the website pages. Besides this, I would like to thank all the panel members, Mr. Asher Saeed joining us from Karachi, Ms. Arshia joining us from Karachi, and then Ms. Aris here in Lahore studios. With this, I would like to thank one more person, Ms. Suzanne Gerlach, the country director for SIQA. She's actually giving us regards and all the wishes for the sessions today. Thank you very much once again. Stay tuned. Pakistan Zindabad. Allah Hafiz.